definitely one of the most captivating games of this year must be the newly released Dredge, a cosmic horror fishing game that takes the wholesome and beloved fishing genre and lets the goths have a go. With any new game that interests me, I naturally begged the developers to talk to me, so I called up Black Salt Games in New Zealand a week before the game's launch, and we talked about the origins of the game, what goes into its clever horror twist, and the magic of fish with human teeth.
It started off being a game that was in a slightly different direction from where it kind of originally ended up in. And I think it was supposed to be like a really kind of like interesting sort of game loop. And then I think you decided to go like, let's just put the camera behind the boat and see it in 3D.
Yeah, it has changed a lot. The original idea, I believe, was kind of more like it was a turn-based thing, but it's like evolved so much. It's almost unrecognizable from it. Yeah.
How is that working out?
Well, we didn't get as far to prototype that part of it, but I think it was more like going to be like a management-y kind of you know, move your boat, it costs some resource kind of thing. It's like a
fuel resource thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's elements of that still in it to an extent.
Yeah, like kind of FTL faster than light, but with fishing.
I guess it could have been an alternate reality. The prototype for the game we made very quickly in 2 weeks, and because of that, the art that was made for it was predominantly 3D and it was very low poly and quick. But then when we play tested it, there was something kind of endearing about the contrast of horror and this low poly art style. I put some of my own influence into it as well, and then it was just a little bit of experimentation. And
I think, yeah, it's a really interesting one because although it's kind of low poly, there is quite a bit of detail into things because I think one of the key things that we've kind of done is rather than just making these epic sort of texture maps, everything's kind of like geometry based to keep the sharp edges and everything there, which goes in line with a lot of your 2D art, which has a lot of like clean, crisp cut edges into the actual 2D characters. And then we had to translate that into 3D, which meant doing that with geometry rather than with a texture. And of course, there's also this whole idea of like, we kept things relatively vague, like from the prototype, everything's really simple. And then I think usually it's going back to like the old school days when you're young and you play a game and you've got these great ideas of what this game looks like. And you come back to like 10 years later on and you go like, that looked a lot different in my head. But it's a little bit different here where it's just like, you're kind of filling in the gaps on your own. And that kind of leads into what we're doing with the horror side of things as well. Like we don't show a lot of the horror stuff, but people just imagine things. And I guess people are probably maybe even imagining more detail than there actually is with the concept art or with the actual art in the game.
I mean, I'd love to talk more about that, the kind of the night in this game, because that is such a fascinating experience. It feels like loads of things combined in one thing. I'd love to just ask about everything about it, about the kind of the panic meter, about like how you create the kind of the feel and the vibe of the night, about how you ended up at that place, and what you wanted to create with that experience of when it starts getting into the evening.
Yeah, I think a lot of that comes down to like, especially that kind of like claustrophobic and emptiness that you kind of feel out at night, where when the fog rolls in, the only thing you can really see is just like your boat and the immediate area around you. And then so when you're not too sure about what's ahead of you, that creates a bit of that scary sort of feeling to things as well. And also when it comes to the audio, we kind of like kill a lot of the actual background music and songs and stuff. And it's just kind of like the absence of sound is what kind of makes things really creepy, because then anything you do hear just becomes amplified even more.
Yeah, I guess anything that might make you comfortable that at the daytime, like the bright colors or all the details or the music is kind of gone at night, and replaced by just this blanket of fog with like very little detail and just your mind to fill in the gaps. But the daytime can be quite bright and colorful sometimes. You see the sunsets in the game and they're quite vibrant. And then at nighttime it's all just washed out, and it's the contrasts that are the most intriguing bit to me.
It's a cosmic horror. I think some Lovecraftian things go into that as well, but I guess I wanted to pull on what you took from inspiration-wise for the look of the game.
My favorite recent art styles in video games are kind of like the more abstract ones, like you might see in and I love the way that they've approached the painterly abstract look of like Disco Elysium, and also to a large extent like the portraits that you find from Dishonored or the concept art. The stuff that is finished only in the right places, like in the faces, but then becomes more abstract outside of the focus.
And I think especially for Dredge, I was involved mainly with a lot of the monster kind of designs and stuff. And then for that kind of inspiration, all you really have to do is just search up what already exists in the world, and then there are some already messed up looking fish at the bottom of the ocean. And then when you just search up a little bit of that kind of like cosmic horror Lovecraftian lore, and you get like, ooh, that ties in pretty well with this. If I just fuse these two things together, then we get something pretty interesting.
Yeah, deep sea creatures kind of already are the most terrifying thing you can think of. Like, I feel like if we could try and create fantasies, but the real thing, honestly, they've got it. They nailed it. Whatever's down there, they've got it. I know, Mikey, I know you worked on a game called Depth that I actually really enjoyed.
Yeah.
So you have your previous experience making horrible deep sea monsters.
It's funnily enough, I think we both have done quite a few fish things over the years. I think Alex is done with fish from now on. I think you worked on maybe 3 projects now that have got fish in them.
It's a weird recurring theme in my career, is like I'll end up drawing fish.
Yeah. and then I've just seemed to have managed to find myself doing a whole bunch of just 3D creatures, monster fish and stuff in the past as well. Yeah.
I guess to ask about for 3D fish, first of all, like those models, what were like your favorite ones to create and what were the most challenging ones?
Probably my favorite one to work on is one that we don't even get to show off very often, which was like the Leviathan. So there's an interesting creature in the game, and that one was really fun to work on and stuff as well. So hopefully people will come across that one inside of the game. But yeah, that was my favorite thing. Other than that, I actually really enjoyed doing a lot of the kind of like the buildings and stuff as well, because I was trying to make these simple objects and where I can kind of push detail while still trying to keep it in theme with everything without going too overboard, because it's kind of like I have to rein myself in half the time to try and keep it clean, cut, and simple without going too overboard. So finding that balance was really enjoyable.
And on a 2D aspect, listen, Alex, I know that 2D, you've got a load of stuff to work on in the game, and it sounds trivial to ask this, but you had to draw a lot of fish. Like, you had to draw like a lot of fish. There's a lot. You drew so many fish. Like an extraordinary amount. I guess that's not really a question. That's more of just a grand statement. I guess, what was it like having to create, not only like recreating real fish, but then creating weird eldritch versions of those fish?
The parts that I enjoyed the most with just like the regular fish were kind of like, because you know how our inventory system kind of gives you different shapes. So one of the most interesting challenges is just like sketching and how to put the fish into like, you know, the certain shape that we need, or if it doesn't fit, like what kind of shape does this fish lend itself to? And then when it comes to doing the aberrations, it was kind of like a stream of consciousness kind of thing for the most part, where it's just like, so I'm like, what's something I don't expect with this fish? I'm going to try that out and see if it works. And then when I ran out of ideas, I came to the other guys and got extra ideas to try out.
Have you tried anything with stones on it yet? Like, nope, I'll try that. Have you made it electric yet? I'm like, nope, okay, we'll try that. Have you turned it inside out yet? I'm like, nope, let's try that.
Let's see where it goes, you know? Yeah, I found any human feature on a fish is immediately very unsettling.
Yeah, like a hand. Fish shouldn't have those.
Yeah, you give fish teeth, like human, like molars, like teeth. Something about that is just like wrong. There's a fish out there that actually has that. Like the ocean's already beating me to that.
Yeah.
That something that looks like that.
I guess I wanted to also, I guess maybe this is a question for Joel, who sadly can't be here, but I imagine it goes into a lot of all of your roles. It's a fishing game, so the fishing mechanic is kind of one of those important things to get right, I suppose. There's so many, you know, one of the things I like about fishing games is that every game kind of does it a little bit differently and has their own take on it. What was it like kind of coming up with how the fishing in Dredge works? Were there other alleyways you went down? How did you end up with what you have now?
Well, there's a lot of options that we could have gone with, but our game's a little different in that it's definitely like it's a fishing themed game, but the actual fishing mechanic is kind of simple, and that's on purpose because the real kind of resource in the game for you is time, and we didn't want to make a sort of like frustrating mini game or something that is going to get repetitive or takes, you know, a lot of skill. It just needs to be something where with a little bit of effort you can do it faster, you know, and if you just kind of leave it, then you spend more time and you might find yourself on the water at night.
Yeah, it's just really interesting because it's such a simple thing, but you are focusing on hitting that spot for the most part. which means that your attention is focused on trying to time that correctly, when really what you should be looking at is that time that's happening at the top there. So when you're focusing on this thing, you don't realize that time ticks up pretty quickly when you are fishing during the day.
So, I don't want to ask that question. Every now and then I scribbled on one really dumb question that I regret writing down because I want to ask it. And I have written down here for you, Alex, why did you make the collector so hot? Why is he just smoking? I'm going through these old janitors and these old whaler folks, and this smoke show comes out talking about supernatural stuff.
It's
What's
the
going
best,
on
right?
I don't know, is it? I don't have a good answer for that. I guess he is what he is, you know?
Waiting for that fan now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those the collector body pillows will just come, swarming in.
Still gonna be the fishmonger one.
Yeah.
I think what we did like a Valentine's Day post, and we made like a fake dating profile for the fishmonger.
Thank you for watching, and thank you to Black Salt Game for chatting with us. If you like this video, please hit subscribe, and if you liked it a lot, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/overlode for funky perks and to fund more cool stuff like this.